my gosh. Welcome to our 65th episode of More Up North. I'm so glad you're joining us, and happy Thanksgiving weekend. We're coming into the holiday season and have many, many things to talk about here on More Up North. I'm looking forward to a great interview with Mr. Guy, Fat Guy, you might have heard of him. We are also going to have a fantastic, the power panel, and Alaska's, of course, Thomas Jefferson is here. Vic Fischer. I know, I'm going to try not to, grab him and hug him and kiss him during the show. So you'll want to come back and make sure that I can keep under control. We'll be back with More Up North. Welcome back for our interview. Oh, this is going to be interesting at best. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be great. You can listen to him Spin Records weekdays. Do they still do that, Spinning Records? In the afternoons on 94.7 KZND The End. And during the holiday season, he collects gifts for foster teenagers because he was one. Thanks for being here, Fat Guy.
Hi. I'm so impressed with the new show layout from last year.
I know.
It's dynamic. You are legitimate. I mean, you're always legitimate, but now you have production.
I know, it's great.
Someone did my hair.
Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? I'm so glad you were here last year, and I've been walking past you in the halls at this station a lot, and I had no idea that you were a foster kid.
Yeah.
I didn't see the stamp or the tattoos or whatever comes with that, and you came to me and you're like, look, this is really important. We're doing a toy drive for foster teenagers.
Right.
And so you came into the studio and I'm interviewing you and you had me crying almost, like you were a foster teen and why this was so important to you.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the circumstances of that, of what it was to grow up as a foster kid? How were birthdays? How was Christmas? How did that go?
They were just days. And and that's the thing is, when you're in foster care, when you're a little kid, it's so scary. I was in foster care from the time I was 8 until I was 18, until I, went out into the world.
You aged out.
Yeah. When you're in there, it is horrifying, And even if you have the greatest foster parents in the world, which, believe it or not, there's not that many of them, but even if you have the greatest foster parents in the world, it's still scary. You don't know if you're going to be there the next day. You don't know what your lot in life is. You don't know if the people that are there actually care about you or care about the check. So it's not nice. Birthdays just didn't really happen. Happy birthday, kid. Cool. Here's a treat. You get an extra helping at dinner. Awesome. Christmas was even worse because a lot of times when you're in foster care sorry, I bounced things, and the foster parents have other kids, you're second class. You are that outsider looking in at what a family should be.
And we should say this isn't every foster kid's experience. This was the experience that you had, and there are a lot of people, I think, who take foster kids in and they have a real different mode, but that there's a lot of kids who aren't in homes that are that warm. And
you're absolutely right. Let me just put this in there. A great example is my partner. I do a show on 94.7 The End, Brock and the Fat Guy, Brock Lindo, from 36 Crazy Fest. He couldn't be here tonight because he had a family emergency, but he took in foster kids and provided a great home. So you're absolutely right. There are parents out there. I'm not trying to sell you the horror stories. I'm trying to sell you what I went through and let you know that for a lot of these kids, there is no Christmas, there is no birthday. There's just December 25th and whatever day they happen to be born.
Right.
So.
Well, I know that last year you started taking wish lists, and from kids in the foster care system. And I was stunned when I was like reading on one of the lists, I don't know how to do this, I've never done one, as though it was going to be graded. And how that really hit me. And you know, you brought in some letters that came in from kids in the foster care system that are really, I mean, their names are blacked out, yours are as well. My daughter is a teenager, and she and I took on several of these foster kids and tried to make their wish lists come true. Christmas morning, one of the first things she said to me was, I hope they liked what we got them.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge amount of our Christmas was making sure that some kids who had never even written a list before had things. And you have, what, 170 now?
I have 160 lists. Last year we took care of 76 kids. This year I have 160 lists, all right here, of kids. And what we did this year is we asked them to fill out a form. And on the form, we asked them to tell us a little bit about themselves because, you know, for example, last year, we just asked them really, because it was kind of a last-minute deal. So we said, hey, write down 3 things you would like for Christmas. And this year, we sent them a form, had all the kids fill out a form, asking them their age, what their favorite colors were, their sizes, what hobbies they do. This one wrote, I am 15, I attend high school. I love ferrets, you know, just giving us different, you know, things about them.
Right.
That way, there's more of a connection. There's kids that are in there saying, I love to play video games and I love to be outdoors. There's kids that wrote in there, you know, for their hobbies, I'd like to find my family. And there's kids on their wish list that said, I want a family. You can't give them a family. But you know what? Some of the other things that they, you know, wrote on their list, you can do for them. And
I know last year one of the people that we took, she said, I would like to have a coat that is warm, and I would like it to be purple if it's possible.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they make purple warm coats. I'm sorry that your life hasn't shown you that. So please tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want to be fulfilling part of this list. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me by going to 947kznd.com, spelled out. And there's a link on there. They can email me, fatguy@947kznd.com. Can I say something real quick? And I know that you guys are on a timeline. Which camera? Last year, the reason why we were able to take care of all 76 kids is because of you. Shannon Moore's listeners, Shannon Moore's viewers of More Up North came in so hardcore and just saved the day last year. And I'm really hoping that if you're out there watching that you contact us and make these kids feel like they're somebody. Because when you're in a foster care system and you don't have the parents out there, sometimes you feel like nothing. And last year we helped bring a little joy. Let's do it again this year.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Fat Guy. We'll be back with the panel. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited about our panel. I really am. He's a veteran and served 23 years with the Anchorage Police Department and an additional 2 years of as a federal police officer. Wow, fancy. He's currently representing the east side of Anchorage Assembly and is a candidate for mayor of Anchorage. Please welcome Lieutenant Paul Honeman.
Thank you.
And he was a former Alaska Attorney General and a columnist for the Anchorage Daily News. Please welcome John Havelock. And he was a territorial legislator and delegate to Alaska's Constitutional Convention and former state senator. Say hello to my good friend and Alaskan treasure, absolutely, Vic Fischer. Oh my goodness. Well, it's been quite a week, and we've got more week to go before this airs, so God knows what the Assembly will be able to do. Oh wait, we have a holiday. You guys have some time off. I want to talk about this just coming out of the chute because you're here with us. Assemblyman Honeman as well, and last night the Anchorage Assembly decided to make it illegal to sit on the sidewalk. And I never really wanted to sit on the sidewalk before but now I do.
You're having an urge. Huh?
I want to know, and in a bigger context as well, we'll ask you how that happened, and then this sort of context of what happened to, we'd like smaller government.
Good question. Well, first, I guess it's a very appropriate, it's Thanksgiving this week, because I believe the Assembly delivered a turkey last night. The laws,
Gobble, gobble.
But the law is, in my opinion, won't really solve any issues or problems. It creates more problems than what it was, I believe, intended to do. And that was directed, I believe, at one individual, Mr. John Martin, who decided to protest his government. I told Mr. Martin to his face, he's not the person that I would look at and say, I know he's got a felony conviction on his record. I know that his conviction is for a sex offense with a teenage girl. And I don't believe that he is the perfect face of homelessness. But, you know, I'm an Army veteran. I'm a veteran of the military. And I'm a sworn member of the legislative body in the state of Alaska. And on all levels, I've taken oaths to uphold and defend our constitutional rights. And one of them is to redress your government in protest. And so I support his efforts in doing that. And certainly had been trying to have dialogues with him.
You know, and I think that's why Mr. Martin is the face of this, because Mr. Martin has made some horrific choices in his life that have hurt people. And the fact that I will fight for his right to stand up there and address his government and to grieve against the mayor of Hinkieville. That's what makes him perfect, is that he's not savory. And he's not, I mean, I don't know if what he's saying I agree with or not, but that's what makes it perfect. I mean, the First Amendment's really about when somebody says something you don't like.
Absolutely.
Not when they say something you like. Well, Mr. Constitutional Writer, how many people can we actually say that about?
What, they're not liked?
That they wrote the Constitution.
Oh, there are three of us who are still left, who are still alive. Jack Coghill and Seaborn Buckaloo used to be a judge here, and I. And it's good to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're such, I mean, when the Alaska Constitution was written, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about with this particular ordinance, you put in things like privacy, and which hadn't been put in other state constitutions. Did you ever imagine that, 50 plus years later, we'd be down the road and our government would be telling us where we can put our bottoms and where we can't?
Well, I keep being amazed when people want to use the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Rights of the Constitution to restrict people from doing certain things. A Bill of Rights is the rights that we have as individuals to be protected from government, to be protected from improper arrest, to give us the right to free speech and so on. And it just seems ridiculous. There's certain situations when, the old one about yelling fire in a movie and starting a stampede, okay, that's going a little bit too far. But when a person sits peacefully on the sidewalk, I can always go around him if he interferes with sort of supposedly my free movement. No, I don't believe in restricting individual rights.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and John, we saw that this week. We've seen, it seems like things are escalating at a really quickly right now when it comes to people's abilities to speak. We saw an 84-year-old woman, Dorley Rainey, who was pepper sprayed by the police in Seattle. We've seen students hit with this pepper spray. We've had Fox News say that, well, pepper spray is just a food group. So is hemlock. Yeah. So in seeing what's going on across the country and to think that Alaska is more progressive when it comes to our rights. Like, we're kind of libertarian. We're a bunch of people who want to be around a bunch of people that don't want to be around a bunch of people. And now we've got a government that's like, you can't sit there. Okay, you can sit there these hours. Like, It's ludicrous. I mean, I'm asking you a lot of questions, but what is your feeling? I mean, you were the
Well,
attorney general.
I'm going to do a little take on what you were talking to Vic about, because when I used to go home, when my mother was still alive, to Massachusetts, and she'd always introduce me around as, well, this is my son John, who wrote the Alaska Constitution. And I say, no, Ma, you got that wrong. But I have a friend who did write the Constitution, big chunks of it, and named Vic Fischer. Said, but I did write the Privacy Amendment to the Constitution. It wasn't in the original, and I had a Republican colleague that in the legislature who actually put the thing through. The language was mine. Terry Miller, yeah. So
Wow, thank you.
In 1972.
Right.
Yeah, and Egan, of course, supported me, and that Governor Egan was my governor, and he was all for it, although he wasn't directly involved in it. It was me and Terry. So as far as this current deal goes, we've all been shocked about, I mean, any reasonable person would be shocked about what's been going on nationally on it. And the part, I take less offense about the nervous city attorney, I guess, passing a law, because, if you are going to do any enforcement, you should at least have a premise of having some law that you're acting on and not just going out and doing stuff. But my real concern is training. I think, what is happening out there, when you get this veteran busted open, I wrote about it in my last column. Thank you for mentioning my column.
Yeah, it's great.
And I don't want to see, anything like that happening here would be tragic, because among other things, we're forewarned. So there should be training if they are going to do anything to, disturb the protesters. Then they should have training so that we're not using sticks, we're not using pepper spray, we're using humane methods. But why do we need it? I mean, that's sort of what Paul is saying. I mean,
Right.
we got one guy lying on the sidewalk and a few people in signs, and so
yeah,
what disturbance
exactly.
are they making to the public order?
Well, this is what I
Not yet.
figured out. Everything else has been fixed in Anchorage. Apparently. We've got to run to a break. We're going to come back and talk about this more with our panel. Oh, welcome back to our panel. Welcome back. Okay, so I have a quick question regarding what we were talking about, which was the pepper spray and the overreach. Pepper spray, of course, though it could be construed as a salad dressing to some people, is actually considered a chemical weapon, and it's illegal to use them in warfare. We cannot use pepper spray on terrorists, but we're using it on college kids and 84-year-old activists and anybody in between. There was a letter written from a veteran, and are you all veterans here?
I am.
Thank you for your service. And basically this letter, he said he was warning that our military is going to be asked to step in with this Occupy Wall Street movement at some point in some places, and how that's going to be a torn place for them, whether they're going to have loyalty to the Constitution they swore to, or to orders that may or may not be lawful. What is your feeling on that, being veterans? And Paul, as a police officer?
Well, from both levels. What concerns me is that, again, we have to have, as I think what John had mentioned, training on the appropriate use of any type of response to a resistance. If the mere presence of a police officer asking you to stop doing something, or that identifying themselves and clearly making you aware that what you're doing, your conduct is illegal, should be enough for most average people to say, okay, if I can't do this, I'll go do that, and make sure that they're obeying the law, because most people want to obey the law. You get a few knuckleheads, I call them, that want to challenge that authority, and that's where things start happening wrong, I think, going south. If you don't have a level-headed, well-trained officers who are responding to these incidents, things go bad quickly.
Or if those knuckleheads have run for office or in power themselves.
Of course.
And then they just pass really craptastic sort of legislation.
And
Any president that ordered military in these circumstances should be impeached. That's my view on it. We have had instances, and you may recall that the Kennedys had troops that intervened in order to enforce desegregation in Little Rock, Arkansas. We have a very bad example when General MacArthur, in the wake of World War I, there was a Veterans March in Washington, and they all camped all over the mall, and there was military intervention there. Maybe you could give more excuse to it because it's federal property and it's the mall and so on. But it was still disgraceful that he broke up this veterans thing there. So I think it, where are we? Is this Egypt, where the military, is sort of a part of the government for enforcing the ruling class? No, I cannot see any circumstances that would justify the use of military in the objections that are now going on to the 99 and the 1 and all that stuff.
The 99.
There was a story in the paper today saying that the Republican presidential candidates were asked a question about the so-called Patriot Act, and would it be appropriate to, in order to combat terrorism, to restrict civil rights more than they have been? And all the candidates except Ron Paul said yes, it's better to restrict civil rights. And I'm on this one with Ron Paul. I think individual rights are important, and the government, again, should not interfere and certainly not use the military.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got to run to a break. We're going to come back and talk, and I totally agree. I totally agree with Ron Paul. But Ron Paul is an example of even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. We'll be right back with more Up North. Welcome back to our panel. When we were just going to the break, Paul, you wanted to say something.
We have a federal law ruling. It's called posse comitatus, and it's supposed to restrict the use of military, active duty military, in civilian law enforcement roles. I believe about the only way that would ever happen is if we declared martial law in the entire country. And I think John's right. What are we, Egypt? If it ever gets to that point, perhaps we might look at is that a possible option? But I would never see it being applicable and nor authorized.
Well, the more ridiculous the government gets, whether it be the more absorbent, tastier, better Congress, I don't care what word you put in front of that, you're not. There's that whole part that's going, and then we've got the mayor and the assembly, the Anchorage Assembly, keeping the ass in assembly. I'm telling you what. Passing, I'm sorry. Well, they're trying to keep the ass out of assembly by saying where it can sit or not. I think we need to all go sit down on the sidewalk. And everybody say, okay, we're gonna all be there at noon. Suck it. What are you gonna do, Mayor? You gonna arrest all of us?
All right.
I'm sure he would me. Oh well. I mean,
Would there be hot chocolate?
cocoa? I'm sure.
Make sure the TV cameras are rolling.
Yeah, I'm sure pepper spray.
Right.
They come down the line. I mean, I can't see, and you were in the police department here, and I know you don't speak for them now. I can't see that happening with our police department. I think they know what side they're on, and I think they know who's on their side.
Well, I know of talking to the chief and actually talking to some of the folks last night that came to testify of the Occupy movement, that there's an actual stated agreement that's been mutually comparable and compatible of the protests and their rights and the police department's use of contact and communicating with the folks on where they can and cannot be and what they can and cannot do. So I hope that continues. I'm not going to lie to you. We hire, Anchorage Police Department hires human beings. And I think they're trained very well. And I hope that we never get to the point where someone makes a mistake like that, because that, again, when you get emotions involved and you get someone who's afraid, and it can go both ways. Some bad things tend to happen, and I hope we never get to that point. I hope it doesn't, not in our community. I'd like to think we're a better community than that. But then last night's vote, I thought we were a better assembly body than that.
Yeah, me too. You know what? Voting matters. It just does. And if you don't have that little blue sticker that says I voted, you have no license to bitch. You have to vote. Speaking of that, Mr. Paul Honeman, you are running to be the mayor of this town.
Because we can do better.
You know what? We can. We can do better. You came out this week and you said Bill Sheffield should be fired. He is, of course, the director at the port. And And I was like, yes, and snow is cold, and the sky is blue, Paul Honeman. I mean, this is like one of the most obvious things. I want to ask you, Vic, first. You've been around here for a long time, since the Bering Land Bridge or whatever, I don't know. Ooh, he's really soft. You can't feel this on TV. Oh. So Bill Sheffield, does anyone not remember that he was like damn near impeached and lied, and he had Shively shredding documents for him and lying to grand juries? I mean, he's kind of a hinky dude.
He was not impeached.
Well, he wasn't impeached, but there were proceedings.
I was in the Senate, and there was an investigation, and the Senate voted not to impeach. So that part, things were happening, and somebody went to jail and stuff like that. But what else were you going to say about it?
Well,
Bill?
I'm just wondering, like, is it a real big surprise, given his track record, that Mr. Honeman would be calling for his removal at the port?
Well, I have no idea what happened there, but just from reading and hearing about it, there were horrendous engineering and construction mistakes, and it's costing the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not sure who's personally responsible. I know that there are countries where the person in charge resigns when something happens under his or her administration. But,
Yeah. And then there's others where they throw a pig roast.
yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, no, I was talking to someone one day, and I was like, I'm so surprised that some people are they're not embarrassed or ashamed of how they behave or their failures. And he said to me, they're actually proud. It's not even a matter of shame on this.
What happened in this one, Tana, is first of all, Sheffield bypassed the regular process by which this kind of project is done in a big city. That is, you do RFPs, you have proposals that come in. He had a friend by the name of Nottingham, and I've got nothing against Nottingham.
Is he a sheriff?
He had a new and innovative way of building ports, which we have all seen there, right? But there never was any real testing on it. The only place that Nottingham had used this was in small harbors, not in places where you had to go down 40 feet and where you're going to have tidal rips going by all the time. So the thing is, Vic was saying, it was a disaster from that point of view. A disaster that should not have occurred, because who is Bill Sheffield to be making engineering decisions about, gee, I ought to do this innovative thing that my buddy Mr. Nottingham is doing, and bypassing the kind of system that we have set up for procurement and so on, and just doing it on his own say-so. And then, to top it off, at least for a while, he's out now, but for a while, he is the project engineer. Since when is Bill Sheffield, what has he ever done that would make him a project engineer that could supervise a gigantic project like that? So
Right.
draw your own conclusions about what should happen to a person that makes those kind of errors.
Well, I think we have drawn some, and Paul's certainly drawn one, and now the mayor can either keep a hold of a guy that really sucks, or he can listen to Paul Honeman. Wow, how's that working out for him? We got to run to a break. We're going to come back with questions from our audience.